One of the most confusing parts of leaving a narcissistic relationship is that even after everything they did to hurt you, you still miss them. You remember the manipulation, the lies, the emotional exhaustion, and yet sometimes you still feel that pull. Sometimes you still think about them. Sometimes you even miss them. And the thought can feel incredibly confusing because you ask yourself something that feels almost impossible to understand. Why do I miss someone who hurt me so much? But here's something important most people don't realize. That feeling doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you made the wrong decision by leaving. And it definitely doesn't mean the relationship was healthy. In many cases, it means you experienced something called a trauma bond. If you've been through this, you probably know exactly what it feels like. Some days you feel strong. You remember why you left. You remember the emotional pain the relationship caused, but then suddenly a memory appears. A song, a place, a message you once received. And for a moment, you miss them. You miss the good moments. You miss the person you believed they were. And then the confusion returns. Because your mind says, they hurt me. But your heart whispers, I still miss them. That emotional contradiction can feel incredibly painful. And many survivors feel ashamed for experiencing it. They think something must be wrong with them. But the truth is, what you're feeling is actually a very common psychological response. To understand why this happens, we need to understand how trauma bonds form. A trauma bond is a powerful emotional attachment that develops through cycles of intense emotional highs and painful lows. And narcissistic relationships often create exactly that pattern. At the beginning, everything feels almost magical. The connection feels intense. The attention feels overwhelming. The affection feels deep. This stage is often called love bombing. You feel chosen, special, deeply understood, but slowly things begin to change. Criticism appears, distance appears, confusion appears. The same person who once made you feel incredibly loved now makes you feel insecure, uncertain, emotionally drained. And then suddenly, they become kind again. They apologize. They show affection. They pull you back in. And that cycle begins repeating. Here's the part most people don't understand. This emotional roller coaster can create a very powerful psychological attachment. Because your brain begins associating relief with the moments when the relationship feels good again. When the tension disappears. When the affection returns. Those moments feel incredibly intense because they come after emotional pain. And over time, your brain begins craving those emotional highs. Not because the relationship is healthy, but because the emotional cycle has created dependency. Take a moment and reflect on your own experience. Think about the moments when things suddenly felt good again. Maybe after an argument, maybe after days of distance, maybe after you were almost ready to walk away. And then suddenly, they became affectionate again, kind again, attentive again. And for a moment, you felt relief, hope, connection. That emotional shift can feel incredibly powerful. And this is why it hurts so much after the relationship ends. Because your mind remembers the pain, but your nervous system remembers the emotional highs. So sometimes, when you miss them, you're not actually missing the relationship as it truly was. You're missing the moments when things felt good again. The moments when the hope returned. The moments when you believed the relationship could become what you wanted it to be. But those moments were only part of the cycle, not the whole story. But there's another reason trauma bonds feel so difficult to break, and most people never talk about it. Because trauma bonds don't just affect your thoughts, They affect your nervous system. When a relationship constantly moves between emotional pain and emotional relief, your body begins adapting to that cycle. Moments of stress, moments of tension, moments of uncertainty, followed by moments of affection, relief, connection. Over time, your brain starts associating that relief with the person who caused the stress in the first place. And this creates a powerful emotional loop, one where the same person who hurt you also becomes the person your mind believes can make the pain go away. Here's the part most people don't understand. That emotional pattern can feel incredibly similar to addiction, not because you were addicted to the person themselves, but because your nervous system became conditioned to the cycle. The highs, the lows, the temporary relief. And when the relationship ends, your mind and body can still be expecting that next emotional high. That moment when things suddenly feel good again. That moment when hope returns. But now the cycle has stopped. And that absence can create something that feels a lot like withdrawal. Suddenly you feel restless. You think about them more often. Memories appear unexpectedly. Sometimes the mind even focuses more on the good moments than the painful ones. And this is why trauma bonds can be so confusing. Because logically, you know the relationship hurt you, but emotionally, your nervous system is still adjusting to life without that cycle. And this is why healing takes time. Not because you're weak, not because you secretly want the relationship back, but because your mind is slowly relearning what emotional safety actually feels like. Take a moment and think about something important. Before that relationship, your emotional world probably felt more stable, more predictable. But narcissistic relationships often disrupt that stability. They introduce uncertainty, emotional intensity, unpredictable affection. And when that pattern repeats long enough, it changes how your brain responds to emotional connection. But here's the good news that many survivors eventually discover. Your brain can heal, your nervous system can rebalance, and the emotional pull that once felt overwhelming can slowly lose its strength. At first, the memories appear often, then less frequently. At first, the longing feels intense, then it becomes quieter, more distant, almost like an echo from a chapter of your life that no longer defines you. And one day, something surprising happens. You remember the relationship, but it no longer controls your emotions. You see it more clearly. You understand the patterns that once kept you stuck. And instead of feeling pulled back toward the past, you feel something different. Relief, clarity, freedom. And that moment is incredibly powerful because it marks the beginning of emotional independence, not from love, but from the cycle that once made love feel confusing and painful. And that realization can change something important. Because when you understand trauma bonding, you stop blaming yourself for the emotions you're experiencing. You begin understanding that your attachment was shaped by powerful psychological patterns. Patterns that many people experience in emotionally manipulative relationships. You weren't weak, you were responding to emotional conditioning. And here's something important to remember as you continue healing. Missing someone does not mean you should return to them. Missing someone does not mean the relationship was healthy. It simply means you are human. Human beings form attachments. Human beings remember emotional connections. But healing happens when you begin seeing the relationship clearly. When you begin recognizing the patterns that once kept you stuck. When you start valuing your emotional well-being more than the hope that the relationship might change. With time, something begins to shift. The emotional pull becomes weaker. The memories lose their intensity. The confusion slowly fades. And instead of asking, why do I still miss them? You begin asking a much more powerful question. Why did I tolerate something that hurt me so deeply? And that question leads to growth, self-understanding, emotional strength. If you still miss a narcissist sometimes, please remember this. Your ability to feel love is not a flaw. Your capacity for emotional connection is not a weakness. The pain you experience does not define your future. In fact, many survivors eventually realize something powerful. The relationship that once broke their heart also became the experience that taught them the most about themselves, their boundaries, their worth, their emotional strength, and once that understanding grows, the trauma bond slowly begins to lose its power. If this video helped you understand why those feelings still appear sometimes, consider subscribing to the channel. Here we talk about narcissistic relationships, trauma bonds, and emotional healing. Because understanding what happened to you is one of the most powerful steps toward reclaiming your life. And remember, you survived the relationship. Here, we help you survive it too. And if you've ever wondered about something else, why do narcissists suddenly stop talking to you? Sometimes without any explanation at all. The next video on this channel explores the psychology behind the silent treatment and why narcissists use silence as a form of control. And once you understand that pattern, even more pieces of the puzzle begin to fall into place.